following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown. And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Hello, Cougar Nation. This may be a couple days too late, but I'm going to do it anyway, Mitch. Happy New Year, Cougar Nation. Glad to be with you. It has been a minute since we have communed with you talking BYU sports, and we'll do that tonight. We're not ready to turn the page to basketball just yet after a great bowl win. I know it's been in the rear view for a little bit. We're going to talk a lot of football, close the books on a memorable 2024 season. Maybe we'll sprinkle in some hoops as well, but a lot to get to tonight, Mitch.
How will you remember the 2024 BYU football team? We want to hear from you, Cougar Nation. 801-575-8255. Again, that's 801-575-8255. Load up the phone lines. Share your thoughts on how you're going to remember this 2024 BYU football team. Picked 13th in the preseason media Big 12 poll. They finished 11-2 and had a dominant win in the Alamo Bowl. Let's unpack everything that took place this season, including that Alamo Bowl, in the takeaways.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
What a win that was, Mitch. 36-14. There are so many angles to that win that was so sweet, one of which being that it sort of felt like the broadcast wasn't prepared for BYU to dominate Colorado, and it just felt so nice to soundly beat this team that everyone had picked to win. Deion's Buffaloes were the favorite, and yet BYU was clearly the better team in that football game in all three phases. My biggest takeaway, though, from that game, Mitch, is I think we might have underrated Jay Hill's impact. I mean, that was a masterclass defensively for BYU. Shadur looked human. He threw the 2 interceptions, and that rush defense was unbelievable. 9 carries for 2 yards. Now, 34 of those came on some Shadur Sanders sacks. But, hey, credit to this defense. There was exotic blitzes that we hadn't seen very much this season. Harrison Taggart flying in, getting sacks. So I just thought the BYU's defensive performance was elite. It was one of the best performances we've seen in a long, long time. And there were moments this year where the defense was suspect in areas, but they were dominant at the line of scrimmage. Their pass defense was really sound against one of the best passing attacks in all of college football. And I just came away from that game saying it is fantastic that BYU has retained Jay Hill for another year. And I don't know how he did it, but somehow we may have underrated his impact on this team.
It's a great point. And to me, Matt, I feel like along those same lines, this was the most complete bowl game performance I've witnessed in a long time for BYU football. I mean, you could point to the 2020 game against UCF. That was really good against UCF. Dylan Gabriel, 2009 Oregon State. Last time before the Alamo Bowl that BYU defeated a power conference opponent. That was an impressive showing too. But I love that BYU capped off what I think a lot of BYU fans felt was an amazing team. Yet no one nationally was talking about this group at all throughout the entire season. Even when BYU was number 6 in the rankings in the college football playoff, no one was talking about them, and it felt like we were living in this crazy world where we observed this BYU team. It felt like we were the only people, BYU fans, Cougar Nation, and shows like this, where we felt like BYU was a really good football team. And I just love that they capitalized on a massive audience. 8 million viewers watched that football game, and BYU delivered. And I think that's just so great to see because we've seen so many times BYU step into a big stage and just not perform to the level that we think they're capable of. And for BYU to have a complete performance in that setting, that was pretty awesome to see.
And it's nice to have some positive mojo and momentum going into the offseason. Kalani feels that this was a positive thing for the program.
Just looking forward to the momentum that we can gain from this. Obviously, just really happy, want to celebrate with the seniors. But I think this is a really good step for us, and I'm glad that we were able to get this done.
Another takeaway for me, Mitch, was this felt like, and I don't think, maybe it was. I'm curious what you think, but this felt like a game offensively where we saw what a BYU offense could look like if it is run first, featured by L.J. Martin. Didn't hit the 100-yard mark, but I thought this was one of his best games he's ever played. 17 for 93, 2 touchdowns, 5.5 average, and it felt like he was running physical, breaking tackles, getting downhill. I was really impressed with L.J. Martin, and it was really encouraging to see, hey, let's maybe get this guy the ball 20 times a game. Build off of that. Build off the run game. The pass game, we can break that down too. There were some highs and some lows in the pass game, but it was really impressive to see L.J. Martin running physically, because teams that are playing great football right now that are still alive, or even teams that lost. Look at Arizona State. They lost, but Cam Scadaboo was fantastic on the ground game. Ohio State, they've been running the ball very well, complementary with a great passing attack. You got to be good on the ground to be a good college football team, and that was the strength of BYU's offense against Colorado.
It's a great point. And L.J. Martin, still got 2 years of eligibility remaining, back-to-back seasons through his first 2 years where he leads BYU in rushing yards. You're right. I mean, he's the guy that you look at as the star of the backfield. And going into the 2024 season, I thought you need to get another transfer portal running back. I was completely wrong. BYU had a star with L.J. Martin, who I always believed could be a star, but you just felt like you needed more behind him. And I feel like you got a budding star behind him in Sione Moa, who had an impressive performance in the Alamo Bowl. I honestly, and I usually don't have this sort of take, but I feel like BYU's running backs for 2025 stay status quo and develop from within and continue to build out that room, develop them, because I was thoroughly impressed with that unit throughout the entire year. I mean, there were some games where they underperformed, like the entire BYU team, but I think L.J. Martin, when he's healthy, special player, and he could be one of the best running backs in the Big 12. He earned Alamo Bowl Offensive MVP. That was a great performance. I think, honestly, a breakout performance for him to really show that he can be a superstar.
Yeah, because there have been games, you've seen flashes of that, but that felt like true ground and pound football with LJ, and that's something that you can build on. Teams that can run the football that well, they have a lot of success going forward. I also like that the win, Mitch, kind of capped off a really successful senior class. Guys like Tyler Batty and Connor Pay. I love that video you took of that really long embrace of Kalani Sitake and Tyler Batty. Goes to show that special relationship between Kalani and the players, and this is what Tyler Batty had to say about the guys who will be coming back. Tyler won't be coming back, but this was his message to Cougar football down the road.
I hope our teammates just remember, how much we at least tried to invest in this program. I think for me that's really what it comes down to is do the same thing that we've done. We stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us. I've had an opportunity to play with some incredible teammates during my time at BYU that have helped shape and form me and have helped shape and form the culture. I just want to be remembered as one of those guys that helped push BYU to be great.
It's amazing when you think about BYU prospects sometimes how long sometimes their careers or their name can be kind of in the BYU universe of sorts. Tyler Batty committed to BYU 8 years ago in December 2016. 8 years. I mean, Kalani Sitake had not yet finished his first year as the head coach. So his name was linked to BYU football pretty much the entire Kalani Sitake era. And there was a mission to Spain and then a gray shirt and then COVID and then 4 years. But so it was a unique journey. But, he invested a lot into BYU football. Same with Connor Pay. And you hope that leadership can continue into the future, because now you're getting a team, when you look ahead to 2025, where a lot of these guys have experienced success and they haven't maybe experienced the hardships or the life of an independent BYU football team. They're guys that have been, fed the Big 12 schedules. They know the gauntlet of the Big 12 and winning at a high level. Hopefully that intensity can still maintain itself, because, we saw it, the best Kalani teams, 2020, 2021, 2016, 2024, the theme with a lot of them, they had to prove themselves. Quarterback competitions. They were not anointed in the preseason. The one team that was really kind of anointed in the preseason, 2022, they underperformed. 2017 was kind of viewed as a big-time team. They underperformed too. So hopefully they can maintain that intensity, and I think that the hardships they faced in 2023 can maybe continue to build that narrative or kind of that commentary that Tyler Batty talks about and continue to build this thing up, because BYU football is at a place where you don't want this to be like so many Big 12 teams, a flash in the pan. You want it to be long-term success and become the standard in the Big 12 Conference. That's what's in front of BYU.
Let's answer the question on the other side, Mitch. How will you remember the 2024 BYU football team? We'll get to your texts. We'll get to your calls. 801-575-8255. Cougar Nation, we're back for 2025. It's brought to you by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit us online at cbutah.com.
How many things affect your life as much as slow traffic and bad weather? Listen tomorrow morning for traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the nines on KSL News Radio.
Hopefully we don't have too much bad weather here soon. These dark, dreary nights and the weather.
I want a month of blizzards.
The weather today. The weather today reminded me like, oh yeah, we're in the thick of the winter. But hey, Cougar Nation rolls on. We're in mid-season form.
Winter's not even a month old.
I
man.
know it already just feels. I enjoyed San Antonio too much. That's 78 degrees. The river walk, it was wonderful. Anyway, Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you here on Cougar Nation. 801-575-8255. The question today as we recap the 2024 BYU football season, how will you remember this 2024 BYU football team? Let's get out of the phone line and welcome in Ryan from Tooele, who's patiently been on hold. How are you going to remember this team, Ryan?
I'm just going to remember this team and this season as the impressive bowl game win against the projected number 1 round draft pick and the Heisman winner.
I love that, Ryan. And you know what? That is a great point because Colorado might have the top 2 picks. I think does that add to the special nature and kind of validate that this team was one of the best BYU teams of all time?
Yeah, it really does.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. We appreciate you hopping on board. That was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, I don't think he looked at his best, but I love that those guys played. Shedeur took a beating, too.
Oh, yeah.
BYU was all over him. Raider to Mooney, Tyler Batty. I mean, even that touchdown pass he had to Travis Hunter, Batty laid him out, and he was able to complete the pass. But I think it was interesting, too, in that game. And you'll relate to this, Matt, because I know if you hear this, if you're a Jazz fan, you're probably going to be very upset with us. But Matt and I are resident Laker fans here on. Maybe we get a side hustle. We can have a Laker Nation.
Fault.
That's right. But at Jazz Laker games here in Salt Lake, there'd always be a gathering of Laker fans around the tunnel to see Kobe or LeBron come out and see the superstars. That was the case at the Alamo Bowl. Tons of people waiting around the tunnel to see all the stars from Colorado. I bring that up because I've never seen that from a college football game. Usually college football athletes are not, paparazzi worthy. Like you're not gathering around a tunnel to see, ooh, all the stars are rolling out. And it was that with Shedeur and Travis Hunter and then Terrell Owens. And then, holy cow, there's 2 chains rolling out. I'm like, this is insane. I've never been part of this. Usually I'm used to seeing, maybe the celebrity watch at BYU games is like an apostle or something. This is a little bit different. Seeing 2 chains roll out. But, it's again, for BYU to capitalize, caps off an amazing 2024 season and one of the best teams, I think, in BYU football history.
Texter 7491, we beat Utah. That's something that will always be remembered. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of positives from this year, Mitch. There were some memorable close wins. There were some heartbreaking losses. I'm going to remember 2024, sadly, as a year of missed opportunity. When I was watching that Arizona State-Texas game, I could not help but feel like BYU would have been in the same position against most teams in the playoff. In a tight fourth quarter, with a chance to win. Now, Arizona State didn't make the plays. They had a 4th and 13 that they gave up to Quinn Ewers, and Texas ultimately won that game. But I could not help but feel, especially because those all happened after BYU had soundly defeated Colorado, I could not help but feel like this could have been and should have been BYU. If they had just done 1 or 2 things differently in the Kansas game, in the Arizona State game, they could be here. They could be having a landmark moment. The way that people talk about Arizona State right now, it's like the last 10 years never happened. It's this program on the ascent. They've got a great quarterback. Their coach is unbelievable. That could have been BYU, and it probably should have been BYU. But it's not, because it slipped through your fingers. And so I can't help but feel like, although a great year, 11-2 is a great year, and there's so much positive stuff to take away from it. I don't want to take away from any of that. There's a lot to build on. But with 10 years from now, when I think about 2024, I'm going to think about that was the first 12-team playoff, and BYU should have been in that thing, and they weren't. And it still hurts, Mitch.
You know, coming into the show today, our producer, Nate Slack, who you can follow on X, Nate Slack 5. He always holds it down, gets people fired up on X.
He does like to stir the pot.
We love it. We love Nate. He said coming into the show prep, and I want to pitch this your way, knowing how the outcomes ended up, BYU has a blowout win over Colorado. Would you replace that for a loss, first-round loss in the playoff? Like what Arizona State experienced?
100%.
You would have taken the path of what Arizona State had. Even if with a loss. Were you in with heartbreak?
Even with the heartbreak and the loss. Because from a fan's argument perspective, you would always hold, like, not a trump card because you lost, but you could always say, we were in the first ever 12-team playoff. Was Utah State in that? Was Utah in that? No, we were in it. But you don't have that. And then the momentum gained, we just heard Kalani in the last segment talk about the momentum gained in the offseason. You gain a ridiculous amount of momentum from making the 12-team playoff and not even winning. Even teams that got blown out. SMU is talking about, we're on the ascent, we're building something here. No one's talking about getting blown out by Penn State. They're talking about being a playoff team and about being a perennial contender in the ACC. And that's what's happening to Arizona State. Everyone looks at Arizona State and says, they're going to be back. They're going to be competing for the Big 12 championship. Keep an eye on Arizona State. No one's saying Scadaboo's leaving and, it was a nice one-year thing. It's all said and done. I think all the positives that we're talking about from the win against Colorado would still be there. Plus, you would have played in a meaningful football. Think about the value even losing that game would have to Jake, to LJ, to Chase. These guys coming back, having played on the biggest stage in this sport. Yeah. I absolutely would prefer to be 10 and it'd probably be 11-3 because you would have had to win your conference championship 11-3 and you lose in the playoff.
You convinced me. I would have said Colorado Alamo Bowl, but make a good point because being in that field, being in that 12-team field would be an accomplishment. Just like getting the NCAA tournament is a big thing for any school, and I think for BYU basketball, they're going to obviously, whether it's this year and the years to come, go deep, and just getting a bid won't be good enough. But getting into that field is always an accomplishment, and it's something that you go into the Marriott Center Annex, and it's got a bunch of NCAA tournament bids, like just getting into that field. So I think that's a fair point. I just love the way that game played out, though, against Colorado because it was so complete, and I love that BYU played a complete 60 minutes, and there were even stretches in that game where Jake didn't look great, and you're kind of like pulling your hair out at times with some of those passes, but man, they overcame everything, and just they always had an answer, and it was just the complementary football, the complementary nature of this team, special teams, offense, defense. They found ways to score in a variety of ways this season. And when you just kind of take a step back and getting ready for this show today, just looking at the stats, the balance, it was just really an impressive season where you had so many guys contributing at a high level. Maybe they don't have the bona fide Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders type stars, but man, this was a really good football team, and they put out their best product in that Alamo
And one
Bowl.
of my favorite parts about this team, Mitch, was this staff, obviously led by Kalani, he's the head coach. They opted to develop in the offseason. They did not overhaul the roster. 2 years ago, it was a massive dip into the portal, and it was roster turnover like you and I have never seen before in our lives. And the cohesion, the chemistry, it never quite came together. And then in the offseason, they returned nearly the entire football team. And they developed, and there were questions, and they were doubted. You mentioned the 13th selection in the preseason poll, and yet guys emerged. Storylines developed. I loved that about this team, that there's guys here that you can get behind as a fan that will be here for 2, 3, 4, even 5 years. you can develop that relationship with them and root for them. I love that about this team.
Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank. We'll take more of your phone calls, 801-575-8255. Talking and recapping the BYU football season in 2024. One for the record books. We'll talk about it more next here on Cougar Nation.
Be ready for BYU Game Day. Download the KSL News Radio app to stream BYU games, plus breaking news during the week. That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Feels good to be back, Mitch. Cougar Nation, with all of you beautiful BYU fans out there driving around, listening to us, however and wherever you listen. We love you guys. Cougar Nation, it's brought to you by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit us online at cbutah.com. We're still taking your calls, and we're getting your texts, 801-575-8255. How will you remember this 2024 BYU football team? You know what? We got a couple Lindas on the line, Mitch. Let's get to the Lindas. Let's get to the Lindas here on Cougar Nation. Linda from Salt Lake City. What was your favorite part of the season when BYU was riding high and in the top 10?
Yes, when they were ranked number 6, I was praying and hoping, wow, they're going to be number 1 this year, just like in 1994. We're going to live it all over again. I was just really hoping, and I just remember I used to work at KSL, and I had to screen the calls when they had Cougar Call-In back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
I did that for years, and I'd have to screen all the calls and before they could talk to the coach and all that. And I'll never forget that night that they were number 1. We were eating snacks and clapping our hands and just so happy that they were number 1, and I'll never forget that day.
Nor should you. That was an amazing time. And do you think that BYU ever get back on top to get to number 1 again?
Yes, and here I thought they were going to this year.
Yeah.
When they were number 6, I was just, that would have been wonderful if they would have been number 1 again. Oh, could you imagine? We were all just sitting around cheering and having so much fun. And
it would have been electric, but you know what? Hey, the chase will be great. I love the energy, Linda. Thanks for the call. It's getting 2025 started off with some excitement, some energy there. Love that. Let's get back out to the phone line. Another Linda here on the line.
Our dear friend, Linda.
Linda, how will you remember this 2024 season, Linda?
Oh, I'm going to remember just all the games are really good, and the last one especially, because I was just so happy when we won. I was just thrilled, and I wasn't I think my favorite part of the game, I was on pins and needles till the end. I wanted to make sure they won, and I was so happy. Tyler Batty did a really good job, and L.J. Martin, and just everybody did. I really was impressed. By the way, I do know the other Linda. We're both blind, and we went to the school for the blind together.
That's amazing. Linda, good stuff,
is.
Linda. Happy New Year to you, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Happy New Year to both of you guys, too.
We appreciate you,
Thank
Linda. And I think that's a good point from Linda about Tyler Batty put some NFL film on tape in that game.
And he's now down in Florida and getting settled into life to just prep, because we always see it after their college playing days are done. They become the most shredded athletes you've ever seen. You go, where was this at BYU? But it's like, oh, yeah, you're just like 10 hours a day just working out.
He's accepted East-West game, right?
Yeah, he's East-West Shrine game and Combine invite as well. So
he's got a shot.
No question.
And that's what I love about him coming back. He has certainly elevated his NFL opportunity.
And I just wonder, for him at the defensive end spot, does the age become a factor? At quarterback, it's not an issue. We kind of learned that with Jaron Hall. I mean, maybe he got knocked a little bit, Jaron did, but you can play into your 40s if you're a really good quarterback. They don't care at quarterback. You're protected. But at the end, though, that feels like a position where you got to be younger, where 21, 22, and then they got, 3-4 years of you, and then they can really start to hit your stride at the age he's at. He's, 25, 26, somewhere in there. So that, to me, is going to be interesting for him, and hopefully he puts up some good numbers at the Combine. We're getting into that part of the calendar, the offseason, where we're breaking down 40 times, verts, things like that. But if he tests well, paired up with 4 years of consistent production at a successful program like BYU, I think think definitely Batty's got a shot. And I think that he's going to be someone at a minimum, he's going to stick. It's just will he get the opportunities to then have a chance to play and be the guy that BYU fans remember.
BYU has built a fantastic NFL reputation of late. I think if there's ever been a time to go to the league from BYU, this is it, because you're standing on the shoulders of the Fred Warners, the Andy Reeds, the Puka Nakuas, Taysom Hill. There is a long list of guys who are maybe overlooked. I mean, Fred was overlooked. Fred was a mid-round pick. It's easy to
Brady Christensen.
It's easy to forget. Like, Fred is unanimously one of the best defensive players in the league. You would think he was just some first-round pick and flourished. That was not Fred's path. And Fred even changed positions in the NFL and became a dominant middle line. He didn't play middle linebacker at BYU. So I think there is some positive cachet there that will work well for Tyler Batty in one way or another. And I thought he had a great game. That was one of, I thought, his best games as a BYU football player, and a great way to go out.
It's just a bummer he didn't get the sack, like the actual stat. But if you watch the film, I mean, the pressure was all day. He tore up that Colorado offensive line. But it would have been sweet for him just to get that number, get that sack, because those sort of things do matter. For a position like that, you want to get that sack total. But he will be remembered as one of the best defensive ends for BYU. Let's get to trending up and trending down.
Cougar Nation, trending. What's trending up and what's trending down this football season?
I'll start things off. Trending up, BYU's coaching staff. Kalani gets a long-term extension. Feels like the coaches are locked in. I mean, there's still, NFL jobs, it comes out. I'm not saying head coaching jobs, but you never know. There's always some potential coaching position out there that could shake things up. So you never want to say it's final. But as of right now, as winter semester approaches here for BYU, it seems like this staff's in place. And, man, they're trending up. They're doing a really nice job bouncing back. And I have to give credit, to we gave a lot of credit to Jay Hill. Aaron Roderick, I thought, called a creative game.
Yes.
I love the sprinkling in Gary Bohannon offensively. I thought that was a really impressive game called by Aaron Roderick, and he deserves his flowers for that performance.
I'm glad you bring that up. That's a great point, Mitch. That was his, in my opinion, and there's no way to you can't have a right or wrong opinion here, but from my viewpoint, that felt like the most deceptive, the most creative, you used that word, the best balance play calling we've seen all year from him. I really liked the way he called that game. It's unfortunate that they didn't convert on a couple of explosive plays that were there. But, yeah, to your point, trending up for me, Will Ferrin, my goodness, what a weapon. That dude is squarely going to be on a short list of people capable to win the Lou Groza next year. I hope that Kelly Poppinga and probably specifically Kalani Sitake, this guy's a weapon. If it's 4th and 3 and it's a 58-yard field goal, why not trot him out? Every kick that he made felt like it could go from 60-plus. He banged in 2 50-yarders against Colorado. We were talking off the break. In the Arizona State game, BYU got the ball first. They drove down. They were in Arizona territory. It was just past midfield. They went for it on 4th down. They didn't get it. Arizona State had great field position, went the other way, went up 7-0. What if you trot out Will to attempt a 60-yard field goal? Worst case scenario, you're turning it over just like you did in that game. And look, hindsight's 20/20, but it's fun to have these discussions. He makes that field goal. Is that a completely different football game?
Could be.
He's a weapon.
He absolutely is. I mean, 113 points this year. Last year, by comparison, he led the team in points, and he only had 66. So he was outstanding for BYU, automatic. And think back to March 2023, spring ball. We're watching the kicking competition, you and I and the media members. No one can make a kick, including Will. He's come a long way. He's doing a great job, and Big Game Bill is living up to the hype, and he is doing a masterful job. That 54-yarder before the end of the first half in the Alamo Bowl, I mean, it was a thunderous boom when it hit his foot, and it just went off. I mean, it was an impressive kick that could have been made by, 60 yards? I mean, it was really impressive what Will Ferrin is doing. What about trending down for you, Matt? How you feeling on the trending down?
Trending down for me, it's an easy pick here. Jake Retzlaff is trending down. I thought that was one of his worst performances of the season. They blew out Colorado in spite of Jake in a lot of ways. And what was discouraging, two things really stuck out to me that has me worried for next season. Now, if he takes another jump like he did last year, all can be forgiven. But he was not accurate in that game against Colorado. That opening throw to Keelan Marion, that's a touchdown. Keelan was wide open on the post. Lead that in front of him, touchdown. On the there was another interception. It was the 2-point conversion where they ran Keelan out. And if you see that play, that's got to be you get the ball and you fire that thing to the corner. That was there. And he threw it so late and it got picked off and it didn't matter. And his performance, no one's even looking at it because they blew Colorado out. But I thought that was a poorly performance from Jake. 12 of 21, 151, sub 60% completion, under 100 rating, 98.5. That's just not going to get you to where you want to get to. And you've got to be more consistent in your accuracy, and you have to be a better decision maker. And I just felt like, gosh, I wanted him to close it out on a high note. It was a dome, for heaven's sakes. It was good weather. There wasn't a lot of pressure from Colorado's defense, and yet it was the same old Jake spraying balls all over the field. I did not like what I saw after that UCF game from Jake, and he's got a lot to work on if this team wants to improve and compete for Big 12 championship.
He finished 57 yards short of 3,000, almost hit that 3,000-yard clip. I thought he was going to get there, going into that game, but comes up short for 3,000 yards.
Am I being too harsh on Jake?
I don't think you're being too harsh. I mean, part of me, though, it feels like that's just – when I left that game, I kind of came away feeling like that's just how BYU was built this year, where Jake's not going to have the eye-popping numbers, but they're still going to win. But you wonder, I think now, though, to your point, is that performance and what we saw from Jake over this season, will he take another step forward like he did from 2023 to 2024, and can he get BYU to the Big 12 championship? I mean, because, look, I point to it. Tom Holmoe said he wants to see BYU football improve next year. Well, how do you improve from 11-2, where you were tied for first place in the league? You get to the championship game and you win it. That, to me, is improvement at this point from where they were this season.
Right.
And is Jake going to do enough? Does he give you the confidence that he's going to go deliver a Big 12 championship? We've seen so many times in this league where teams go from 10 to 5 in a hurry, 5 wins. TCU was in the national championship.
Oklahoma State, for heaven's sakes.
Oklahoma State, TCU was in the national title game, and then they've dropped to 5 games. This league's wild. So I think that there's no way that he's not going to be your starting quarterback next year. But I think that it's clear you still got to improve. You can't just say you've arrived and just say that he is just suddenly one of the great quarterbacks in BYU history. He's still got to continue working, kind of have that chip on the shoulder that he thrives on. I mean, he did a great job by trying to prove doubters wrong. He thrived in that space. And I want to see him continue to get better. I think he's got the ability. I think he's got the work ethic. But
he's got the work ethic.
You wonder if he's hit his ceiling. And I think that's kind of the question you wonder. Is who he is, and is that going to be more of that? And is that going to lead itself to another 11-win season, or do you drop down to 7 or 8 wins? I think that's kind of the question I have.
He's got the work ethic. He's got the leadership. The guys like him. There's no locker room problems with Jake. There's a lot to like about Jake. I love his dual threat ability. Just, you got to be accurate, Jake. 98% of the game. You got to hit guys when they're open. You got to give them chances to run after the catch. And in that Colorado game, man, the mechanics were loose. And that's, I think, an issue with Jake, is he likes to get loose with the mechanics. That pick where he threw, where he was running to the right and threw it across his body to the end zone, and it was easily picked off, intended for Keelan Marion. You cannot do that. You've started too many football games to be making that throw. That's got to be cleaned up. John Beck, if you're out there, clean that up this offseason if BYU wants to get to the Big 12 championship game.
Cougar Nation, Central Bank's proud sponsor, Cougar Nation. Central Bank voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit us online at cbutah.com. Taking the final time out, 801-575-8255. Call in, share your thoughts on this BYU football team in 2024.
Cougar fans, use this radio station tomorrow morning for important news updates. Listen to Utah's most important radio station tomorrow morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back into Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank. It's been an awesome season, and Cougar Nation is going to continue on. This isn't some season finale. We're going to have BYU basketball breakdowns every Monday night as the Cougs settle into life in the Big 12. Kind of tough weekend this past weekend at Houston. Cougs in blue got completely wrecked at Houston. They got a chance to bounce back, though. They've been really good in bounce-back games this season, 3-0 in those spots. Or 2-0, excuse me. They got Texas Tech tomorrow night. Tip-off at 7. We'll be inside the Marriott Center. So I expect BYU to bounce back, but, we'll be covering it every step of the way here on Cougar Nation every week during the basketball season.
Yeah, full disclosure with Cougar fans, it was break down the 30-point loss or break down an 11-2 football win, and we took the football. There'll be plenty of basketball going forward. How will you remember this 2024 BYU football team? And we're also taking your calls, 801-575-8255. Mitch, someone wants to talk to you. Someone wants your insider knowledge. Brady from Lehigh. You want an update on Chase Roberts?
Hey, guys. Yeah, love your show. And, Matt, just want to say hi from a fellow PGN. Go Vikings.
Go Vikings, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Mitch, have you heard anything about Chase Roberts' injury? Like what happened and where he's at?
So he suffered an injury on his left shoulder. He left the Alamo Dome in a sling. Aside from that, as far as timeline, we don't know yet. That's going to be a big question going into spring football for Chase. And, it's a bummer because he had that big announcement that he was going to be coming back for the 2025 season. It would have been a little bit more awkward had he announced he was going pro on the heels of that injury. So, to me, it's just a situation where you get him ready for the season. You get him ready for fall, to me, because you know what he is in spring ball. You don't need to see Chase Roberts there, and he's got that chemistry with Jake Retzloff. But Chase Roberts is going to be the best receiver for BYU football next year, and you got to get him ready. But as far as specific timelines, we don't have that yet. And winter conditioning is going to be starting coming up tomorrow for BYU, and they're going to get to work on that. And I think that was kind of a common theme at the Alamo Bowl field after the game was so many players are like, just kind of going up to guys and talking to them, and they're like, work starts next week. Like it feels like this group, even though they've got all this praise and accolades and everyone's feeling good about this team, there's this feeling among the group that there's unfinished business. And that was one of the reasons I believe Chase Roberts comes back. And, NIL probably factored into that too. Let's not get it twisted here and act like there's not money involved too to come back. I think there was some, it made sense financially to come back for Chase too. But, he's get him ready for the fall. We've seen in the past too, when it comes to shoulder injuries, think back to Zach Wilson, 2019. He missed all spring, and then he comes back in the fall. And it took a little bit of time. And so, well, again, not sure the extent yet. And I don't want to speculate on what exactly, what surgery or anything like that. Not sure. But to me, if you're Kalani and you're BYU, just get Chase ready for these games because you know what he is. And he's a special football player, and you want to get him to the league and have him as best product coming up in the fall. And so that is going to be a storyline to watch this offseason when he is fully healed and ready to go because he's due for a big season in 2025.
Brady, you still there?
Yes, sir.
What was your lasting memory of this 2024 football season?
Oh, man. I'd have to say both the Kansas State game and Oklahoma State. Me and my boys were able to go to both of those, and we were going nuts. I was going nuts, and my younger son, he's 8, he told me I need to calm down a little bit. So it was such a fun season to share that with my boys because I had memories like that with my dad when I would go. The 1996 season was my first year, and then the 2001 Utah game. I remember that Luke Staley option, and so those are memories that are burned into my head, and I am so happy to have those with my boys. And this was a fantastic season. Yeah, it could have been more, but definitely can't complain. And love all the guys coming back and the transfers coming in, and I'm excited for the future. Go Cougs.
Love that call, Brady. That is one of the great things about BYU football and just BYU sports in general is the memories that you do create because when you do get to go to those games, it's sometimes it's going to be a little bit taxing. I'm sure it tested Cougar fans going into the season thinking, do I want to spend my hard-earned money for another losing season? But Cougar fans showed up, man. They were sold-out crowds pretty much every home game. those atmospheres now at LES are electric. I mean, Brady's talking about 96, 2001. It's a different game.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I mean, BYU's.
It's an event.
It is a spectacle. Every single time out, there's something going on. And BYU football games are a lot of fun now. Beyond just simply the on-field product, which have always been fun. But now you got all the other stuff, too, to keep people's attention involved. It's a fun time. And, hey, look, we got, 7.5, 8 months till BYU Portland State. Let's go. August 30th to get the countdown rolling.
I will say, Brady brought up the incoming transfers. It's been a really nice transfer portal class so far. We were there New Year's Eve for BYU Arizona State. One of their newest football members, Keanu Tanavasa, the transfer from Utah. He got recognized at that game. Standing ovation from the fans. Really key moment for the football team. To get this defensive lineman, you need guys like him on the trench. You need good defensive lineman play. So there is a lot to build on from this 2024 team now. It's about putting in the work, developing the chemistry, shoring up the issues from 2024. They got to do that in the portal maybe a little bit more, probably add a little bit more depth there, but they're in a good position going forward.
2024 BYU football will be remembered for a very long time. We'll talk to you next week here on Cougar Nation as we shift to BYU basketball. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte. Talk to you next time here on KSL.